The instant the sound of sirens rolled down the otherwise silent street, my stomach sank. Not out of fear, but because I knew exactly who had made that call. I was standing ankle-deep in dust, watching the final pieces of my bridge come together, when HOA Karen decided today would be the day she tried to ruin everything. I can still picture how calm that morning had been. The creek behind my property barely moved, birds were loud and constant, and my tools were laid out in perfect order. This bridge wasn't some spur-of-the-moment weekend idea. It was a carefully planned project I'd been working toward for months. A simple, solid wooden bridge meant to connect my driveway to the back portion of my land. Nothing extravagant, nothing unlawful. Licensed contractors were on site. Permits were printed, laminated, and posted. Every step followed the rules. I had checked, double-checked, and triple-checked every regulation before a single board went down. And then there was her. She lived 3 houses away, the type of neighbor who treated binoculars like decorative furniture. Earlier that morning, I'd caught her watching from her porch, arms crossed tight, lips pressed in, eyes narrowed like she was tallying up my errors. I ignored her, like always. People like her thrived on reactions, and I'd learned long ago that silence irritated them more than confrontation ever could. But sometime mid-morning, I saw her marching toward us with intent, phone raised. She wasn't waving. She wasn't asking questions. She was filming. She stopped right at the edge of my property and loudly announced, for everyone to hear, that what I was doing was completely illegal. She claimed I was damaging protected land, altering water flow, breaking HOA rules, violating county codes, and ignoring environmental regulations. She tossed out every buzzword she could think of like confetti. My contractors froze. One of them glanced at me, silently asking if they should stop. I calmly told her the bridge was fully permitted, and even pointed to the permit posted clearly on a wooden stake. She didn't bother looking. She didn't need to. Instead, she smiled, not a friendly smile, but the kind that says, "I've already decided how this ends." She stepped back, dialed her phone, and said the words that made my blood go cold. "Yes, I'd like to report an illegal construction project. Immediate danger." That's when I understood this was never about a bridge. The HOA had zero authority over this section of land, and she knew it, or at least she should have. But Karen had a habit of acting first and letting consequences catch up later. She wanted control. She wanted to humiliate me. Maybe she thought she could shut the project down for good. When the police cars arrived with lights flashing, the entire neighborhood seemed to appear out of thin air. Curtains shifted. Phones were raised. Karen stood proudly near the road, arms folded, nodding as if she'd just rescued the community. An officer approached me and asked who was responsible for the construction. I raised my hand, calm but irritated, and said it was mine. Before I could explain anything else, Karen cut in, ranting about how people like me think rules don't apply to them. She spoke quickly and dramatically, pointing at the creek, the workers, the lumber, and me. Like everything was evidence in a trial, she was certain she'd already won. I felt that familiar mix of disbelief and frustration tighten in my chest. Not because the police were there, but because she turned something simple into a public spectacle. This was supposed to be a good day. Instead, it had become a standoff on my own property. As the officer asked for documentation, Karen leaned closer, watching my face, waiting for panic, guilt, or mistake. She had no idea how badly she'd misjudged the situation. Standing there with my permit in hand while the neighborhood watched in silence, I realized this was only the beginning of her mistake. The officer took the permit from me and examined it carefully. Karen didn't wait. She never does. She stepped forward again, pointing at the creek like it was a crime scene, her voice rising so everyone nearby could hear. She claimed the water level had already changed, that wildlife was at risk, that she'd spoken to people in the HOA who agreed the entire project needed to be shut down immediately. Every sentence dripped with confidence, even though none of it was true. The contractor stood off the side, tools lowered, exchanging uneasy glances between me and the officers. One of them whispered that he'd never seen someone so confident while being so wrong. I quietly told him to stay put. Inside, though, my patience was wearing thin. Karen wasn't just accusing me anymore. She was rewriting reality in real time. The officer calmly asked if she had any proof to support her claims. She scoffed and waved her phone, insisting she had videos, emails, screenshots, and an entire file ready to send. When the officer asked to see them, she hesitated, just for half a second, but long enough for me to notice, before aggressively scrolling through her phone, muttering under her breath. That brief hesitation told me everything. Still, she kept talking. She accused me of trying to intimidate her earlier, claimed I had smirked when she questioned the build, said I dismissed her because she was just a homeowner. That line caused a ripple through the small crowd. I could feel eyes shifting toward me, people waiting to see how I'd react. That was exactly what she wanted. For me to snap, to look defensive, to give her story something to latch onto. I didn't. I answered every question slowly and carefully, letting the officer lead the conversation. I explained the scope of the project, the inspections, the approvals, the environmental reviews. Karen interrupted constantly, corrected me with information she clearly didn't understand. At one point, she confidently told the officer that county permits didn't override HOA authority, saying it like it was common knowledge. The officer raised an eyebrow at that. Another patrol car pulled up, then another, with every flashing light. Karen seemed to grow more energized. She stood taller, spoke louder, as if the presence of more uniforms somehow validated her behavior. She demanded the construction be shut down immediately, insisted someone be fined, arrested, or at least cited. She kept repeating the phrase, set an example, and every time she said it, her eyes flicked straight to me. Then came the moment that shifted everything. One of the officers asked her directly if she was officially representing the HOA. She said yes without hesitation. When asked for documentation, she laughed and said she didn't need any because everyone knew she was on the board. That was news to me, and judging by the confused looks on a few neighbors' faces, it was news to them too. The officer wasn't impressed. He asked for her name and identification. Her tone changed instantly, still loud, but sharper now, edged with defensiveness. She demanded to know why she needed to provide ID when I was the one breaking the law. The officer calmly repeated the request. She handed it over, but her smile was gone. While this was happening, another officer had stepped aside to make a phone call. I recognized that look, the quiet verification that only happens when something doesn't add up. Karen didn't notice. She was too busy arguing, stacking accusation on top of accusation, convinced that volume could replace facts. Minutes dragged by. The neighborhood remained frozen, watching the tension build. It felt like everyone sensed a turning point coming, even if they didn't know which direction it would go. Karen crossed her arms and announced confidently that this would be handled at the highest level. She said people like me always think connections will save them. She said she couldn't wait to watch me explain myself in court. I looked at the officer, then back at her, and for the first time that day, I felt something close to calm, because the call that officer was on wasn't about the bridge anymore. And Karen had no idea what she had just set in motion. The officer ended his call and walked back with a completely different expression on his face. Calm, focused, certain. He asked me politely to confirm my full name. I did. Then he asked if I currently served as a county judge. The entire scene went silent. Karen let out a sharp, dismissive laugh. She said that was impossible. Said I was lying. Said people pretend to be all kinds of things when they get caught. She rolled her eyes and told the officer not to let me play games. That's when the officer turned to her and said, very clearly, that my credentials had just been verified. You could feel the shift, like the ground moved beneath her feet. Her face drained the color, her mouth opened, then closed. For the first time since this started, she had nothing ready to say. She tried to recover, insisting that even if I was a judge, that didn't mean I was above HOA law. The words came out weaker now, rushed and desperate. The officer didn't argue. He explained calmly that the land wasn't under HOA authority, that the permits were valid, and that filing an emergency report with knowingly false claims was a serious issue. As he spoke, Karen's posture collapsed. Her arms dropped, shoulders slumped, and her eyes darted around, searching for support that wasn't there. Then the real reason finally surfaced. Another neighbor stepped forward and admitted Karen had been furious about the bridge for weeks, not because of regulations, but because it blocked her preferred walking view. She liked being able to see straight through my property to the creek. The bridge ruined that. It reminded her the land wasn't hers to control. Karen exploded, denying it, accusing everyone of turning against her. But it was already over. The officers explained she had misrepresented herself as an HOA board member, filed a false police report, and attempted to interfere with a permitted construction project. Every accusation she had thrown at me was now coming back around to her. When they asked her to turn around, she froze. Then she started crying loudly, claiming she was only trying to protect the neighborhood, insisting no one appreciated her efforts. It didn't matter. The handcuffs closed anyway. No one cheered. They didn't have to. The silence said everything. As the police led her away, one officer apologized to me for the disruption. I told him it was fine. The contractors picked their tools back up. The creek flowed exactly as it always had. The bridge went up exactly as planned. And as I watched Karen disappear down the same road she tried so hard to control, I realized something important. Power doesn't come from shouting the loudest. It comes from knowing the truth and letting it speak for itself. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Every single subscription motivates me to bring you even more dramatic and satisfying HOA stories. And don't forget to tap the bell so you never miss a new upload. I'll see you in the next story, where justice is even sweeter.